Today we're heading into the desert for another 2-in-1 review featuring sand, ghosts, cowboys, and more sand. My name is Graeldon and I'm reviewing Steam games in alphabetical order to find the hidden gems among the piles of garbage, and today's games are 1000 Heads Among the Trees and 1 Too Swift. Let's begin. A small town in Peru called Cachiche is famous due to the local legends that tell tales of witchcraft, and it's here that we find Larry, a journalist investigating the local rumours of ghosts and other odd disturbances. It's a pretty solid setup for 1000 Heads Among the Trees, a first-person horror game created by Aaron Oldenburg, released on Steam in 2015. I say it's a horror game because that's how the game markets itself, but personally I felt it was closer to a surreal first-person exploration game with horror elements. It's also worth mentioning that there aren't any jump scares, so if you're not a fan of horror games, never fear, there won't be any surprises in this review, other than how weird the game gets. There isn't an in-game options menu, but there is a startup menu that allows the resolution and graphics to be adjusted, but that's about it. I actually wasn't sure if it had worked or not at first, because the main menu looked like this. Nevertheless, I decided to press on. The game begins with the player, Larry, in a quiet street in Cachiche in the middle of the night. Larry has access to a camera and a journal and a sense of curiosity. As you explore, you can overhear snippets of conversations from people on the streets and nearby buildings, and you can use the camera to take shots of points of interest that can then be shown to the locals. And I have to say that I love this mechanic. Showing the same picture to different people will result in different responses, and this information slowly starts building an understanding of the town and the people in it. It's also where some of the weirdness begins. First, a dog knocks Larry over, causing him to drop the camera, cracking the lens. And if you ask around, you can find someone who offers to repair it, and they even upgrade it with a flashlight. You'll also find mysterious ghost-like shadows in the crumbling remains of some decommissioned buildings, and sometimes you'll see a hand appear over the lens, blocking whatever you were trying to photograph. The first time this happened was a wonderful moment of surprise, as it was unexpected and certainly creepy, so it was a shame it never really progressed further from there. That said, you can take the photos to a local palm reader who will give you some thinly veiled warnings about your investigations. One of the other things you'll find fairly early on is a statue of Julia Hernandez Petrovioda de Diaz, a name that I apologise for probably butchering horrendously, and she was a local witch who cured a young boy of his stammer, and he then went on to become a famous congressman. I took a look on Google Maps after completing the game, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that the statue and small park were actually fairly faithfully recreated in the game, which is a lovely homage to the source material. Two other things that I found amusing though were that the game has a tendency to use extremely thin and flimsy wire fences as impassable barriers for Larry, and that by jumping on a trash can at the end of the first street it's possible to get out of bounds and fall off the map within the first few minutes of gameplay. When the void is encountered, one must take the leap and dive in. Oh, hail the void! Anyway, gameplay continues in this fashion, gradually increasing in weirdness, but it's certainly a slow build overall. If you want to avoid spoilers, you can go to the timecode on screen now to jump ahead to the verdict section. If you're still here, let's talk about the weird stuff. Other than odd musical cues, nothing really happens until you find this house with a mask on a windowsill. After taking a photo of it, the entire house collapses in an instant. Hopefully there wasn't anyone inside. I do love though how everyone just kind of stands around looking at it before eventually just wandering off. Following on from here, you can walk down a long road where after passing through what I assume is a graphical glitch, you arrive at a dead end with a house and a dog out the front. After a few seconds, the house just leaves. Like, straight up just Looney Tunes style slides away as though it was late for a dentist appointment or something. It is pretty neat though that the dog turns into a skeleton briefly when exposed to the camera flash. That's a nice touch. Larry can also take a taxi to a couple of locations, one of which is Casa El Diablo, or Devil's House, which isn't located anywhere near Peru, so it was probably a ridiculously expensive fare to get here, considering that it's in Colombia, 3,829 kilometers away from Cachiche. After arriving and looking around for a few minutes, the taxi driver justifiably buggers off back to their family that probably misses them dearly, leaving you behind. Without much else to do, you wander back into the ruins only to pass out and enter what can only be described as a combination of delusion and hysteria, experiencing visions of the earth raising and then lowering you, seeing people from Kashyyyk, fire, a person's face in the sun, or maybe it's the moon, and then what I assume is a sandstorm blows through before finally the credits roll. Is there meant to be some deeper meaning to be found here? Perhaps it's a reference to another local legend from Kashyyyk that the player is unaware of. Or maybe there was something in the local food that really didn't agree with poor Larry. 1000 Heads Among the Trees starts out with a strong setting and an interesting, although not unique, mechanic, and is then quickly let down by slow pacing and intentionally confusing scenes. For a game that begins with a strong horror premise, it's a shame to see it so quickly foiled by its own ambition. In addition to the story issues, the movement is incredibly clunky, the music is non-existent, the environmental ambient sound effects are grating, and it was ultimately disappointing to see the game fail to capitalize on the horror premise that it set up. Despite only being around an hour long, I can see why many people will probably never finish the game and opt to get a refund, considering that the game costs $5.49 Canadian. I would too if I'd gone into a game expecting it to be an occult-themed horror game, but instead got Journalist in Peru Has a Bad Trip After Partying with Locals, the game. The thought I was left with after finishing the game was that this is clearly an inspired passion project, but one where the general premise and theme was planned out, but perhaps not the plot progression and certainly not the ending. Again, unless there is a reference to a local legend that I'm not aware of, but then it could also be argued that it's your job as the game designer to make the game understandable to someone that may not have the privilege of such niche context. I can appreciate what this game is from an artistic perspective, and it had a couple of neat ideas, but sadly it struggles to hold up as a complete package. And that's why my final rating for 1000 Heads Among the Trees is a palm reading for a short life out of 10. My life feels shorter already having played this game. Moving on to the next game, 1 2 Swift. I'm sure you know the iconic Hollywood-style scene of two cowboys facing off in the middle of a street, in the middle of a deserted town, in the middle of a desert, in the middle of the day. They stare each other down, a tumbleweed passes through, and then shots are fired. One person walks away and the other does not. It's a very serious, somber, and iconic moment. So what if we had someone shout out, "Hey, it's hi, no one," as the cue to shoot, followed by a Borat-style "Nice." I think most people would agree that this would not enhance the moment, but this is the reality of the game that is 1 2 Swift. Upon starting the game, we instantly know we've got a high-quality product on our hands, thanks to the menu that allows us to choose between VR mode and a blank option. We're not reviewing any VR content, so I prayed to RNGesus that the blank option wasn't secretly an install malware button, and was actually the non-VR version, which thankfully turned out to be correct. Upon starting the game, you'll be greeted by a wall of white text on a black background, a short tutorial that explains the controls, including a picture of a keyboard with an attack button where the shift key should be. And not only is this bewildering because I've never played a game where shift is used to attack, because sticky keys is the thing that most people don't know how to turn off, but also because that's not even how you attack in the game. In a nutshell, this is a 2-player only dueling game that can be played using either a VR controller quick draw style mechanic, or by having 2 players share a keyboard and fight to see who can press 2 randomized buttons the fastest. That's all there is. No game modes to choose from, no tournament style knockouts, no scoring systems, nor any difficulty modifiers. Heck, there's not even any achievements that are given simply for having the game open, making this one of the most bare bones experiences we've found in a long time, and also making it a strong contender for the worst game I've ever played award, simply because of how much of a nothing game it is, and that's saying something, having recently played what is possibly one of the worst Sudoku games ever created. To try and give some constructive criticism to these devs, please consider replayability when designing your game. you need to give the player a reason to play more than one round, whether that be because there are different game modes or modifiers or just some cosmetics to unlock. Personally, I don't think there is enough depth here for an actual full game, but here's a crazy idea that might work. Turn it into a high-velocity tennis duel with fast typing mechanics. At the start of the duel, each player is given a word of the same length to type before the other player does, with no matching keys, e.g. cat and dog. The first player to complete their word fires a shot. The second player then has a chance to volley by typing a new word within a time limit, otherwise they get hit and take damage. Implementing a health system also allows for the inclusion of items, buffs, or other modifiers. That said, I think you need to be able to get the fundamentals right first before you can look at anything like that, and here, well, let's just say it needs a lot of polish before it'll be ready for that. This is the part where I'd normally recap the game and touch on a few points I've overlooked, but there is so little of anything here that I don't want to draw this out and give the game any more attention than it deserves. The game is triple the price I would expect to pay for what is provided, coming at $3.29 Canadian, and the most amusing moment wasn't from any of the actual gameplay, but was instead from the fact that my cursor looked like this for some reason. So that's why my final rating for 1 Too Swift is a black square cursor out of 10. May the cursor grow in size until the black void consumes all and leaves no trace of this game behind. All hail the void. Thanks for watching. Welcome to the end of the video. A massive thank you to all the channel members on screen for supporting the channel, with a special thank you to our 2 Knights of the Holy Grail, Freaky Feline and Loveheart Gonzi. If you'd like to join this gaming crusade, you can check out the membership options below for more details. You'll also find a link to some channel stats and our Discord too. Lastly, I want to thank you for joining me on this weird gaming adventure through the depths of Steam. And if you've made it this far, here's a sneak peek of the next game. Until next time, take care.